Lisa Left Eye Lopes was a powerhouse, the fiery rapper and the soul of TLC, one of the biggest girl groups to ever grace the 90s music scene. Her edgy style, unique voice, and fearless energy helped define hits like Waterfalls and No Scrubs that still echo through speakers worldwide. But behind the fame was a woman deeply connected to her spirituality and always chasing something bigger than the spotlight. In April 2002, Lisa was on a journey to find peace during a spiritual retreat in Honduras, a country she had come to love. Sadly, her life was tragically cut short in a car crash that shocked fans and friends alike. Lisa had been traveling with 8 others in a rented Mitsubishi Montero SUV, a trip being filmed for a documentary. On April 25th, the vehicle was cruising along a highway in La Ceiba when Lisa suddenly swerved sharply to avoid an oncoming truck that was drifting into their lane. The SUV lost control, flipping multiple times in a violent roll. The crash was chaotic. Passengers were thrown from the vehicle, some seriously injured, but Lisa was the only fatality. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and when the SUV flipped, she was ejected from the car, suffering severe head and neck injuries that claimed her life at the scene. The terrifying accident was caught on camera by one of the passengers, adding an eerie sense of raw reality to the tragedy. This moment wasn't just a random crash. Lisa had expressed a haunting sense of premonition in the days before. She believed a spirit was following her, convinced the SUV had been involved in a previous fatal accident, and that this mysterious force was warning her. This blend of superstition and real danger gave the tragedy an almost mystical air, underscoring the vulnerability she felt beneath her fierce public image. Lisa's passing rocked the music world and left a profound sense of loss for those who knew her or admired her work. Thousands turned out for her funeral at the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, where family, friends, and fans gathered to celebrate the life of an artist who had left an indelible mark on music and culture. More than just a talented musician, Lisa was known for her generous heart and her dedication to helping others. In fact, she had spent considerable time in Honduras, investing in the local community and planning projects to support underprivileged children. After her death, her family created the Lisa Lopes Foundation, dedicated to continuing this work and preserving her legacy by making a positive difference where she had found inspiration. Beyond the public eye, Lisa was a woman who battled personal struggles and embraced spirituality in a deeply personal way. She was open about her challenges, including self-doubt and a search for meaning, which made her an inspiring figure to many. Her music often reflected these themes, blending social consciousness with raw emotion, something that helped TLC become a voice for a generation. Her tragic death was a harsh reminder of life's fragility, but also a testament to the lasting impact one individual can have, even in a brief lifetime. Today, Lisa Left Eye Lopes is remembered not just for the accident that ended her life, but for the vibrant energy and creativity she brought to the world. Her contributions to music remain timeless, her voice still inspiring new generations of artists and fans. Songs like Waterfalls continue to resonate with messages of caution and hope, echoing Lisa's own journey of growth and healing. While the crash was a heartbreaking chapter, her story also celebrates a legacy of passion, spirituality, and compassion. The Lisa Lopes Foundation keeps her spirit alive by helping children in Honduras, a country that became a second home to her. Lisa's life and untimely death remind us that behind every star is a human being searching for light, meaning, and connection. A quest that sometimes takes unexpected and tragic turns, but it's the brightness of that light and the love she left behind that truly define her memory, making sure she lives on far beyond the final crash. On the fateful morning of August 5th, 2022, the quiet, sun-drenched streets of Mar Vista, Los Angeles, became the backdrop for a chilling incident that would forever alter the life of actress Heche. Known for her memorable roles in films like Volcano and I Know What You Did Last Summer, Anne was no stranger to the spotlight. But on this day, her life took an unexpected and tragic turn. Cruising through the neighborhood in her Mini Cooper, she was reportedly driving at an astonishing 80 miles per hour in a 25 miles per hour zone, far faster than anyone could have anticipated. At exactly 11:01 a.m., her car lost control, veering off the road and crashing violently into a home on Walgrove Avenue. The impact was catastrophic. Within moments, the car exploded in flames, consuming both the vehicle and the house in a blaze so fierce it seemed unstoppable. Anne was trapped inside the wreckage, unable to escape the inferno that raged around her. Firefighters arrived within minutes, but the fire was relentless, taking more than 30 minutes to contain. When they finally reached her, the damage was already done. Anne had inhaled toxic amounts of smoke and suffered life-threatening injuries. She was rushed to the hospital and later transferred to the Grossman Burn Center in West Hills, where doctors fought desperately to save her. But the burns were severe. Second-degree burns covering 12% of her body, first-degree burns on 40%, and a fractured sternum. Despite intense medical efforts, including skin grafts, Anne never regained consciousness. The next 6 days were a blur of grief and uncertainty for her family. On August 11th, just 6 days after the crash, Anne was declared brain dead, legally meeting the definition of death in California. Her family, honoring her wish to be an organ donor, made the heartbreaking decision to let her go. Through the One Legacy Foundation, her organs were donated, a final act of generosity that she had always intended. Her eldest son, Homer, shared his sorrow with the world. My brother Atlas and I lost our mom after 6 days of almost unbearable emotional swings. I am left with a deep sadness. Hopefully, my mom is free from pain now. The tragic death of Anne Heche reverberated through Hollywood, leaving a void that would be felt for years to come. Friends, colleagues, and fans mourned her loss. Former partner Ellen DeGeneres tweeted her condolences, and actress Patricia Arquette described Anne as wildly talented, someone who had endured unimaginable struggles. Despite a toxicology report revealing traces of substances in her system, it was confirmed that these were pain-relieving medications administered during her hospitalization, not drugs of her own doing. The coroner's office ultimately ruled her death an accident, caused by the combination of inhalation injuries, thermal burns, and a fractured sternum. Anne Heche's untimely passing was not just a personal tragedy, it was also a lesson for us about the fragile nature of life. Her legacy, shaped by both her immense talent and her tumultuous personal struggles, shows us how quickly life can change. The devastating crash in Mar Vista forever altered the trajectory of a career that had been filled with promise, leaving behind a trail of grief and unfinished potential. Through the tragedy, Anne's story stands as a testament to the unpredictable nature of life itself, how it can shift in an instant, leaving us to wonder what could have been. Lisa Lopes, better known as Left Eye, was one of those rare stars who owned the 90s with her fearless style, killer rap verses, and unforgettable personality. As the fiery rapper of the legendary girl group TLC, she was the perfect mix of wild creativity and raw talent. Everyone loved her for that quirky energy, her signature eye tattoo, hence the nickname, and her willingness to speak her truth no matter what. But sadly, her bright star burned out way too soon on April 25, 2002, in a tragic car crash in Honduras that shocked fans worldwide. So let's dive into what happened that day, because it wasn't just any accident. It was a moment that still haunts many who admired Lisa. At the time, Lisa was in Honduras on a trip that was pretty close to her heart. She'd been working on charity projects there and was trying to connect with the country's culture and spirituality. It was a place she loved and wanted to give back to. On that day, she was driving her Mitsubishi Montero Sport SUV near the city of La Ceiba, a beautiful coastal town known for gorgeous beaches and, well, some seriously twisty roads. Here's where the story turns tragic. The road where Lisa's crash happened is famous for sharp bends and curves that demand your full attention while driving. Unfortunately, on that particular curve, Lisa lost control of her SUV. Eyewitness accounts and reports suggest she may have swerved suddenly, some say, to avoid a dog or some other obstacle on the road, but whatever the cause, the vehicle flipped multiple times. When we say flipped, we mean it rolled over at least 2 or 3 times before coming to a stop. The force was so intense that the SUV was left badly damaged, a brutal reminder of how serious the accident was. Adding to the tragedy, Lisa wasn't wearing a seatbelt when the crash happened. This fact is heartbreaking because seatbelts save lives, and wearing one might have made a difference in how this story ended. But the impact was so severe that Lisa suffered fatal head injuries. She was alone in the car, and despite emergency teams arriving quickly, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Just like that, one of music's brightest lights went out at the young age of 30. What's especially painful about this crash is how sudden and shocking it was. Lisa wasn't involved in any risky behavior like drinking or reckless driving. In fact, she was known to be cautious. The exact details about the cause remain a bit murky, with speculation about the road's condition, possible distraction, or that sudden swerve to avoid something. But the bottom line is that the accident happened in a split second, and the consequences were devastating. The news of Lisa's death spread like wildfire. Fans around the world were devastated, and fellow musicians mourned the loss of an irreplaceable talent. TLC's future was forever changed, and tributes poured in from everywhere, honoring her creativity, passion, and unforgettable personality. It was clear that Lisa Lopes wasn't just a rapper, she was a force of nature who had touched millions with her music and spirit. In the aftermath, her death sparked conversations about road safety, especially regarding seatbelt use, and the dangers of sharp curves on roads like the ones in Honduras. It was a grim reminder that accidents can happen to anyone, anywhere, even stars with bright futures ahead. It was the final hours of August 30th, 1997, when Princess Diana, still very much the world's beloved People's Princess, stepped into a black Mercedes-Benz S280 with her partner Dottie West, leaving the Ritz Hotel in Paris. The two had been trying to enjoy a romantic evening, but their every move was tracked by the paparazzi like a pack of wolves on scooters. To avoid the cameras, the hotel's security team devised a plan. A decoy car would leave the front of the hotel to draw attention, while Diana and Dottie would quietly slip out the back with their driver, Henry Paul, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones. Henry Paul, who was also the hotel's acting head of security, had been seen on CCTV behaving strangely before the trip, smiling, waving, and walking with an odd swagger. What no one realized until later was that Paul was heavily intoxicated. Toxicology reports later showed his blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit in France, and he had traces of prescription drugs in his system. Nevertheless, the group left the hotel around 12:20 a.m., with Paul speeding away from the paparazzi at around 65 miles per hour in a zone that allowed less than half that. Just minutes later, as they entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel on the right bank of the River Seine, things turned catastrophic. The road curved sharply inside the tunnel, and Paul lost control of the Mercedes at high speed. The car struck the 13th pillar of the tunnel, crushing the front and sending the vehicle spinning into the opposite wall. The impact was devastating. Dottie West and Henry Paul were killed instantly. Trevor Rees-Jones, sitting in the front passenger seat, suffered massive facial injuries but survived. Princess Diana, who had been sitting in the rear seat on the right side, was still alive but gravely injured. Witnesses on the scene reported that she was conscious and moaning in pain. Emergency services arrived within minutes, but rather than rush her immediately to the hospital, medics treated her inside the wrecked car for nearly an hour before carefully transporting her. Diana went into cardiac arrest on the way to Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital, where surgeons attempted emergency surgery to repair internal injuries, including a torn pulmonary vein. Despite their efforts, she was pronounced dead at 4 a.m. Her injuries had been too severe. Notably, neither Diana nor Dottie were wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash, which likely contributed to the severity of their injuries. The news of Diana's death sent a shockwave around the world. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, stunned and grieving. In Paris, people left flowers at the site of the crash and lit candles near the hospital. In the days that followed, criticism erupted over the role of the paparazzi, who were blamed for relentlessly chasing the car. 7 photographers were initially arrested at the scene, and conspiracy theories soon followed, suggesting the crash might not have been accidental. However, official investigations by both French and British authorities concluded that the primary cause was Henri Paul's impaired driving and excessive speed, compounded by the lack of seatbelt use. Diana's funeral on September 6th was watched by more than 2.5 billion people worldwide. Her legacy continues to resonate, not just as a style icon or humanitarian, but as someone who humanized royalty and made the world care about the woman behind the crown. Even decades later, her story still feels raw, tragic, and unforgettable. On September 30th, 1955, the world lost one of its brightest stars, but it was a day that started like any other for James Dean, Hollywood's heartthrob. At just 24, Dean had already earned the title of the Rebel Without a Cause and was living life at full throttle, both on and off the screen. That day, he was cruising along the highway in his Porsche 550 Spyder, a sleek silver bullet of a car he'd lovingly dubbed Little Bastard. With his signature smoldering looks, a career that seemed destined for greatness, and a love of speed that matched his star power, it looked like Dean's meteoric rise would last forever. But, as it often does with passionate souls, fate had other plans. Born James Byron Dean on February 8, 1931, in Marion, Indiana, Jimmy wasn't one to sit still. Even as a young boy, he exuded that unmistakable spark, that raw energy that later made him an icon. After moving to California and studying drama at UCLA, his natural talent quickly got him noticed by Hollywood's elite. He landed small roles in TV shows and films, but it was his breakout performance in East of Eden that catapulted him to superstardom. With his melancholic eyes and rebellious edge, Dean captured the hearts of audiences across the world. His next big role in Rebel Without a Cause solidified his status as a cultural phenomenon, and the world watched as his career soared. But Jimmy wasn't just a movie star, he was a race car enthusiast. In fact, racing was his greatest passion outside of acting. Though his popularity in Hollywood was skyrocketing, it wasn't enough to satisfy the itch he had for speed. Dean dreamed of one day competing in the legendary Indianapolis 500, and his acting success gave him the freedom to indulge in his racing hobby. First came a Triumph Tiger motorcycle, then a Porsche 356 Speedster. Both choices were fast, but Dean had an unrelenting need for even more speed. That's when he got his hands on a Porsche 550 Spider. The car was a sleek, aerodynamic masterpiece, perfect for a man who craved thrills. Dean's affection for the car was so intense that he gave it the nickname Little Bastard, a name that would go on to take on a chilling significance. By the end of September 1955, Dean had wrapped up filming Giant and was itching to get back behind the wheel. He decided to take Little Bastard out for a spin, accompanied by his mechanic, Rolf Wütherich. The original plan was for the car to be towed to a race in Salinas, but Wütherich suggested Dean take it for a test drive just to feel out the ride. Dean, never one to shy away from a little adventure, agreed. Along with stunt driver Bill Hickman and photographer Sanford H. Roth, they hit the road at around 3:30 p.m., making a pit stop for gas shortly after. By 5:15, they were back on the road, heading west. As they neared the junction of what is now State Routes 46 and 41, fate took an awful turn. A 1950 Ford Tudor, driven by 23-year-old Donald Turnipseed, turned left directly into the path of the oncoming Porsche. Dean, with his racing instincts kicking in, tried to swerve to avoid a collision, but in a split second, the two cars collided head-on. The impact sent Little Bastard careening off the road and into a ditch. The aftermath was nothing short of heartbreaking. When help arrived at the scene, Dean was unconscious and severely injured, suffering from a broken neck and crushed legs. Wütherich, who had been thrown from the car, survived but with significant injuries. Turnipseed, however, walked away with only a few scratches, a twist of fate that haunted him for the rest of his life. Tragically, despite the best efforts of paramedics, James Dean was pronounced dead at 6:20 p.m. on the same day, leaving the world in shock and Hollywood mourning the loss of one of its brightest stars. Less than a month later, Dean's iconic film Rebel Without a Cause hit theaters, forever cementing his place in the annals of Hollywood history. The film's themes of youthful angst and rebellion struck a chord with a generation, and Dean's portrayal of Jim Stark became the defining image of teenage rebellion. But more than his film roles, it was his untimely death that sealed his status as a tragic legend. Dean had lived fast, loved fiercely, and left the world far too soon. His tragic demise, like a flame burning out before its time, made him a symbol of all that is fleeting in youth. Brian Dunn wasn't just a TV personality or a daredevil stuntman. He was a symbol of a generation that grew up on outrageous humor, bruises turned into entertainment, and the kind of fearlessness that made Jackass a cultural phenomenon. Known for his quick wit, signature beard, and willingness to do just about anything for a laugh, Ryan had a larger-than-life presence. But on June 20th, 2011, that presence was suddenly and tragically silenced, not on a film set, not during a stunt, but in a high-speed car crash that took his life and the life of his friend Zachary Hartwell. It was just after 2:30 a.m. in West Goshen Township, Pennsylvania. Dunn was behind the wheel of his Porsche 911 GT3, a sleek, high-performance machine built for speed. His passenger, Zachary, was a close friend and fellow daredevil in his own right, a former Navy SEAL and production assistant. Just hours before, Ryan had posted a photo of the two of them out drinking, seemingly carefree, smiling. It looked like a normal night out, but it would end in devastation. At a speed estimated between 130 and 140 miles per hour, the car veered off the road, struck a guardrail, plowed through trees, and burst into flames. The wreckage was so severe that the vehicle was barely recognizable. Both men were killed on impact. Dunn was only 34. The aftermath was both shocking and sobering. Toxicology reports revealed that Ryan's blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. It was a deadly combination: speed, alcohol, and a powerful vehicle. Fans who had grown up watching him survive seemingly impossible stunts were suddenly confronted with the brutal reality that no one, not even the most fearless, is invincible. The news hit hard. The entertainment world reeled, and his Jackass co-stars were devastated. Bam Margera, Dunn's longtime best friend, was inconsolable, weeping at the crash site, struggling to process the loss. Social media lit up with tributes, memories, and a collective sense of heartbreak. Ryan wasn't just the guy who pulled ridiculous stunts on screen. He was a loyal friend, a beloved son, and someone who had a genuine, unforgettable presence. But the tragedy also sparked difficult conversations. While many mourned Ryan, others couldn't ignore the harsh truth. Drunk driving had ended not just his life, but someone else's too. It wasn't a prank gone wrong. It wasn't a skit. It was real life with irreversible consequences. And for many fans, especially those who admired his carefree persona, it served as a painful wake-up call. In some ways, Dunn's death marked the end of an era. Jackass had always pushed boundaries between pain and comedy, danger and entertainment. But this was different, this was serious, and this was final. And it forced people to confront the very real risks behind the reckless image that had been so carefully cultivated on screen. Today, Ryan Dunn is remembered with a mix of laughter and sorrow. He made millions laugh with his fearless antics, but his death left a heavy imprint, a reminder that life isn't a stunt show, and that choices, even in the blink of an eye, can change everything. For all the laughs he gave the world, his final lesson was the most serious of all. Dottie West was one of country music's brightest stars, a trailblazing singer and songwriter whose voice could make you smile, cry, or grab your boots and dance all night long. By 1991, she had already left a massive mark on the genre, but fate had one last heartbreaking chapter waiting for her. On August 30th of that year, she was driving to perform at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee, a stage so iconic it could make any country artist's heart race. The Opry was where legends performed and legacies were cemented, and Dottie was ready to take her place there once again. But as the story goes, her car suddenly stalled on the road, leaving her stranded and frustrated. Luckily, her neighbor, George Thaxton, a kind-hearted gentleman in his 80s, happened to see her trouble and stopped to offer help. Being the good neighbor he was, George volunteered to drive Dottie to the Opry so she wouldn't miss her performance. Everything seemed under control as they got back on the road, but tragedy was closer than anyone realized. While taking an exit ramp on Briley Parkway, the car suddenly lost control. It went airborne and slammed into an embankment in a violent crash. George suffered serious injuries, but shockingly, Dottie appeared okay at first glance. Rescue crews and bystanders breathed a sigh of relief, thinking she had escaped without major harm. But underneath it all, she had sustained critical internal injuries, a ruptured spleen and a lacerated liver that were not immediately obvious. These hidden wounds were deadly, and she was rushed to the hospital where doctors fought hard to save her life. Despite multiple surgeries and all the best medical care, Dottie West passed away on September 4th, 1991 during her third surgery. It was a devastating blow not just to her family and friends, but to the entire country music community, which mourned the loss of a beloved pioneer whose voice and spirit shaped the genre for decades. The aftermath of the accident revealed even more about the tragedy. George Thaxton faced legal consequences and pleaded no contest to reckless endangerment. Reports indicated alcohol was involved in the crash, and George was sentenced to 11 months of probation along with an alcohol recovery program. The incident served as a sobering reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly it can change. Dottie West was more than just a singer. She was a woman who broke barriers in country music, inspiring countless artists with her heartfelt songs and determined spirit. Her death marked the end of an era, but also sparked reflection across Nashville and the broader music world. Fans, musicians, and industry figures remembered her not only for her unforgettable voice, but also for her resilience and kindness. Over the years, her influence grew even stronger, and in 2018, she was posthumously inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, a testament to the lasting impact she had on the genre she loved so much. Her music still resonates, reminding listeners of a time when country songs were raw, real, and filled with emotion. Dottie West's story is one of talent, kindness, and a sudden tragedy that stopped a vibrant life far too soon. Her legacy lives on in the songs she left behind and the trail she blazed for future generations of country musicians. The accident that took her life was a harsh reminder of how unpredictable the road can be, both literally and figuratively. But through it all, Dottie's spirit and music remain as strong as ever. Whenever you hear her voice on the radio or in a playlist, remember the woman who gave so much of herself to her art and her fans. Despite the heartbreak of that late summer crash, Dottie West continues to inspire with every note she sang and every story she told. Life might have thrown her a curveball, but her legacy is forever a steady beat in the heart of country music history. Bessie Smith, the legendary Empress of the Blues, was a true powerhouse of the jazz age, commanding stages with her soul-stirring voice and unshakable presence. But her life came to a shocking end in a tragic car accident, sparking rumors and controversies that still linger. Born on April 15, 1894, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bessie had a tough start in life. Orphaned young, she and her 6 siblings had to scrape by, performing on street corners for pennies. But even then, her talent shone bright. She later joined a traveling troupe led by blues icon Ma Rainey, who helped Bessie craft her unforgettable stage persona. By the 1920s, Bessie was a star. Signing with Columbia Records in 1923, she became the most popular female blues singer of her era, belting out hits that captivated audiences nationwide. But when the Great Depression hit, her fame began to fade. She took her act on the road, playing smaller gigs in clubs and theaters across the country. It was during one of these trips, on September 26, 1937, that tragedy struck. Bessie and her partner, Richard Morgan, were driving along U.S. Route 61 between Memphis and Clarksdale when things took a deadly turn. Around 2 a.m., Richard tried to overtake a slow-moving truck but misjudged its speed, leading to a devastating collision. The car's roof was ripped off, and Bessie suffered horrific injuries, including a nearly severed right arm and severe trauma to her right side. While Richard walked away unscathed, Bessie was left critically injured in the road. A surgeon, Dr. Hugh Smith, happened upon the scene and did his best to stabilize her, using a handkerchief to dress her wounded arm. As if things couldn't get worse, another car barreled into Dr. Smith's parked vehicle, narrowly missing Bessie. 2 ambulances eventually arrived, one from a black hospital and another from a whites-only hospital, thanks to the segregation laws of the Deep South. Bessie was taken to Clarksdale's G.T. Thomas Afro-American Hospital, where her arm was amputated. Tragically, she never regained consciousness and passed away that morning. Rumors soon flew. Some claimed Bessie died after being denied treatment at a whites-only hospital, a myth perpetuated by jazz writer John Hammond and later immortalized in Edward Albee's 1959 play, The Death of Bessie Smith. Dr. Hugh Smith debunked this, explaining no hospital in the area would have transported a black patient to a whites-only facility at the time. Bessie was laid to rest in Philadelphia on October 4, 1937, with thousands mourning the loss of the blues queen. Heartbreakingly, her grave remained unmarked for decades, partly due to her estranged husband, Jack G., blocking efforts to place a headstone. Finally, in 1970, thanks to singer Janis Joplin and Bessie's friend Juanita Green, a tombstone was erected, giving the Empress of the Blues the recognition she so deserved. If you thought old Hollywood was all glitz and glamour, wait till you hear about Jayne Mansfield, the woman who could turn heads just by walking into a room or crashing through a pile of photographers. Jayne was not just another blonde bombshell in the Marilyn Monroe mold. She was Marilyn cranked up to 11 with a love for dramatic entrances, outrageous publicity stunts, and a personality as big as her beehive. In the 1950s and early 60s, she was everywhere, starring in films splashed across tabloids and making waves with her signature look-at-me attitude. She was a master at grabbing attention and was always ready to shake things up with a jaw-dropping outfit or a headline-making stunt. But by the mid-60s, the spotlight had started to dim. Movie roles were getting scarcer, and the Hollywood buzz was cooling down. Even so, Jayne was not one to fade quietly away. She kept pushing herself with nightclub performances and television appearances and worked hard to stay in the public eye. It was during one of these late-night gigs that fate would decide to slam the brakes literally. On June 29, 1967, Jayne was traveling through the South in a shiny Buick Electra, making her way from a nightclub show in Mississippi to another engagement in New Orleans. Riding shotgun was her driver, Ronnie Harrison, and in the passenger seat was her boyfriend and lawyer, Sam Brody. The back seat held her 3 kids, including her youngest daughter, Mariska Hargitay, who would one day become a famous actress in her own right. The night was dark and the roads were slick with the kind of fog that was not natural but caused by a truck spraying insecticide to kill mosquitoes and keep the bugs away. This mosquito fog was thick like smoke, and it severely reduced visibility, making it nearly impossible to see what was ahead. At about 2 a.m. near Slidell, Louisiana, the Buick slammed into the back of a slow-moving tractor trailer that had pulled over behind the insecticide truck. The impact was devastating, and the Buick slid underneath the trailer, shearing off the roof of the car in a terrifying scene that looked like something straight out of a disaster movie. Jayne, Sam, and Ronnie died instantly, while the children in the back seat miraculously escaped with only minor injuries. The crash sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the world of fans who were stunned by the sudden loss of such a larger-than-life star. Almost immediately, the rumor mill went wild, and one of the most enduring and morbid myths about Jayne's death took hold. People claimed that she had been decapitated in the crash, creating an image that was both gruesome and unforgettable. In reality, Jayne was not decapitated, though she did suffer severe head trauma. The confusion likely began because one of her famous blonde wigs was thrown from the car during the crash and was found tangled in the wreckage. This wig was mistaken for part of her scalp, and that simple misunderstanding turned into decades of gossip and urban legend. Despite the horror of the crash, the aftermath brought about a practical change in trucking safety. The government required the addition of rear underride guards on tractor trailers, those metal bars you see on the backs of big rigs that prevent cars from sliding underneath in a collision. These safety bars are often called Mansfield bars in her honor, since her tragic accident highlighted the need for better protection. Jayne Mansfield's life may have ended too soon in a shocking way, but her legacy lives on through Hollywood lore, her daughter's successful career, and in the very real improvements to road safety that save lives every day. She was a blazing star who knew how to make an entrance, and even in death, her story continues to captivate and remind us all how fragile and unpredictable life can be. Anton Yelchin's death in 2016 was a heartbreaking accident that stunned both his fans and the wider entertainment community. On June 19th, at his home in Los Angeles, the young actor was tragically found pinned between his own Jeep Grand Cherokee and a brick mailbox pillar at the bottom of a steep driveway. What made the incident especially shocking was the bizarre and freakish nature of the accident. The SUV had unexpectedly rolled backward down the incline, trapping Anton in a terrifying way with no chance to escape. The steepness of the driveway was a key factor that turned what should have been a simple moment of parking into a deadly situation. Despite the prompt arrival of emergency responders, Anton succumbed to his injuries at the young age of 27. At a time when his career was rapidly ascending and his creative talents were widely recognized, recognized. This sudden loss left a profound void in Hollywood and among fans worldwide. Digging deeper into the accident reveals a troubling mechanical flaw in the Jeep model Anton owned that played a central role in the tragedy. The gearshift mechanism on this particular Jeep Grand Cherokee had a design flaw that could confuse drivers. Even when the gearshift appeared to be in park, the vehicle might not have been fully secured. This meant the SUV could roll away if the parking brake wasn't properly engaged, despite the driver thinking the car was safely parked. This issue wasn't isolated to Anton's Jeep alone. Other owners of the same model had reported similar rollaway incidents. The investigation following his death intensified scrutiny on this mechanical flaw, leading Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, the Jeep's manufacturer, to issue recalls and software updates aimed at preventing future accidents. The incident highlighted the unexpected dangers of modern car designs and the importance of safety engineering, revealing how a seemingly minor issue could turn everyday tasks like parking a vehicle into fatal hazards. Beyond the tragic details of the accident itself, Anton Yelchin's life and legacy remain deeply impactful. Known primarily for his role as Pavel Chekhov in the Star Trek reboot films, Anton was more than just a sci-fi star. He was a gifted actor whose performances displayed emotional depth, versatility, and a natural charisma. He was also an artist outside of acting, dabbling in photography and music, reflecting a creative spirit that extended beyond the screen. Colleagues and fans alike admired his humility and kindness, qualities that made him approachable and beloved despite his rising fame. His untimely death at just 27 was not only a shock, but a tragic reminder of life's fragility and unpredictability. The loss resonated deeply, inspiring calls for improved vehicle safety and greater awareness of hidden dangers in everyday objects. Yet, despite the sorrow, Anton's work continues to inspire, and his memory lives on as a testament to a young life and career that were full of promise, talent, and genuine warmth. November 30th, 2013, started off as a pretty chill day for Paul Walker. The 40-year-old actor, best known as Brian O'Connor from the Fast and Furious franchise, was hanging out with his mom and 15-year-old daughter, Meadow. They were casually chatting about Christmas tree shopping when Paul suddenly got a reminder about an event he needed to attend. In a rush, he left, completely unaware that this day would tragically change everything and shock fans around the world. Paul William Walker IV was born on September 12, 1973, in Glendale, California, practically destined for stardom. With a model mom and an amateur boxer dad, Paul grew up surrounded by the glitz and grit of showbiz. He was already stealing the spotlight at the age of 2 in a Pampers commercial. From TV roles in shows like Highway to Heaven and Charles in Charge, to starring in 90s hits like Pleasantville and She's All That, Paul was on a steady rise. But it was his role as undercover cop Brian O'Connor in The Fast and the Furious, 2001, that turned him into a Hollywood A-lister and a fan favorite. Beyond acting, Paul had 3 great loves: cars, racing, and charity work. Unfortunately, it was this very trio that led to his untimely death. On that fateful day, Paul attended a charity event hosted by his nonprofit, Reach Out Worldwide, at a car shop he co-owned with his friend Roger Rodas, a former race car driver. After the event, the duo decided to take a quick spin in a 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, a beast of a sports car, but notoriously hard to handle. At around 3:30 p.m., with Roger behind the wheel and Paul in the passenger seat, they sped off. The car, estimated to be traveling at 100 miles per hour, spun out of control, hitting a curb, a tree, and a light post before slamming into another tree and bursting into flames. Onlookers from the charity rushed to help, but the fiery wreck was too intense to approach. Tragically, both men were pronounced dead at the scene, with Paul's cause of death determined to be a combination of traumatic injuries and burns. The investigation later revealed that the car's excessive speed and the age of its tires were the primary causes of the crash. No drugs or alcohol were involved, but the loss of Paul sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Fans and co-stars alike mourned the man they admired, not just for his on-screen charisma, but for his off-screen kindness. Paul's daughter, Meadow, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche, alleging design flaws in the Carrera GT contributed to the crash. Porsche countered that the car had been altered and misused, but the lawsuit was eventually settled confidentially. At the time of his death, Paul was in the middle of filming Furious 7, which left the production team scrambling. After consulting with Paul's family, his brother Cody stepped in to help complete Paul's remaining scenes, with a little help from CGI to give fans a heartfelt tribute. The crash site in Santa Clarita soon became a shrine, as fans from around the globe left flowers, notes, and mementos for the beloved actor. Though Paul Walker's life was cut tragically short, his legacy of kindness, talent, and passion for fast cars lives on, both on screen and in the hearts of millions. General George S. Patton was one of the most celebrated and formidable military leaders of World War II. Known for his aggressive tactics, fiery speeches, and fearless leadership, Patton played a pivotal role in many of the Allies' major victories. His reputation as a bold and sometimes controversial figure preceded him, and he was often seen as the embodiment of American military strength and determination. After the war ended in Europe in 1945, many expected Patton to continue influencing the military and political landscape. However, his life was cut short in a tragic accident that shocked the world and left a lasting mark on history. On December 9, 1945, Patton was traveling near Mannheim, Germany. He was in his personal Cadillac, a vehicle he famously preferred because it symbolized his style and status. The war was over, but Patton remained deeply involved in overseeing the post-war occupation and the reorganization of American forces in Europe. While driving on a road near the city, Patton's car collided with an American Army truck. The crash was severe, and Patton sustained catastrophic injuries. He suffered a broken neck and a spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the neck down. For a man known for his robust energy, physical fitness, and commanding presence on the battlefield, this was a devastating and ironic turn of fate. After the accident, Patton was rushed to a military hospital where he received the best medical care available at the time. Despite the efforts of doctors and surgeons, the extent of his injuries meant that his condition was extremely serious. Patton was unable to move or speak clearly, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed his commands. As days passed, his health deteriorated further due to complications common in such severe spinal injuries. He developed a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot that travels to the lungs and can be fatal. This complication ultimately caused his death on December 21, 1945, just 12 days after the accident. Patton was 60 years old. The news of his death stunned the public and military community alike. Patton had survived some of the most brutal battles in history, facing enemy fire and life-threatening situations repeatedly. Yet he died not in combat, but because of a peacetime traffic accident. This unexpected outcome led to widespread disbelief and sadness. The general's death also sparked numerous conspiracy theories. Some speculated that Patton was assassinated because of his outspoken criticism of Allied post-war policies, especially his distrust of the Soviet Union and his desire to continue military actions against them. Others suggested covert government plots or political motives behind his death. However, no credible evidence has ever been found to support these claims. The official conclusion remains that his death was the result of a tragic accident compounded by medical complications. Patton's passing marked the end of an era in military leadership. He was among the last generals to personify the aggressive frontline command style that defined World War II's ground campaigns. His leadership was often direct and demanding, inspiring fierce loyalty from some soldiers while earning criticism from others for his temper and strict discipline. After Patton, the U.S. military began evolving towards more strategic and technology-driven approaches, but his legacy of boldness and determination continued to influence military culture. The funeral for General Patton was held with full military honors, a testament to his immense contributions and iconic status. Leaders, soldiers, and civilians alike came to pay their respects to a man who had become a symbol of courage and resolve. His life story, filled with victories, controversies, and an untimely death, remains a compelling chapter in American history. Reflecting on Patton's life and death, one cannot help but acknowledge the unpredictability of fate. Despite his formidable strength and remarkable achievements, his life was ended abruptly by circumstances far removed from the battlefield. His story reminds us that even those who seem invincible are vulnerable, and that sometimes life's greatest challenges come when we least expect them. General George S. Patton's legacy endures not only through his military successes, but also through the human story of resilience, tragedy, and the fragile nature of life. Once upon a winding road in the picture-perfect hills of Monaco, the glitz of old Hollywood and the elegance of royalty collided with tragic fate. Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress, Hitchcock muse, and full-time real-life princess, was behind the wheel of her metallic green Rover P63500 on the morning of September 13, 1982. Riding shotgun was her 17-year-old daughter, Princess Stephanie, probably half listening to her mom's commentary about life, traffic, or whatever royals chat about on Monday mornings. They were heading back to the prince's palace from their country estate in Rock Agol, taking the famously twisty and treacherous mountain road known as D37, a route filled with sharp turns, blind corners, and not much room for error. As the car snaked its way downhill, something went horribly wrong. Somewhere near the bend known as Devil's Curve, and yes, that is its actual spine-tingling name, Grace reportedly blacked out at the wheel. The official cause? A mild cerebral hemorrhage, basically a small stroke, which struck at the worst possible time. Mid-turn on a narrow cliffside road, the Rover veered violently off course, barreled through a low stone wall, and plunged about 120 feet down a steep embankment, cartwheeling through trees and rocks before crashing into someone's backyard. The car was mangled. Grace was critically injured, unconscious, and suffering from massive internal bleeding and brain trauma. Stephanie was trapped in the wreckage, tangled in twisted metal, reportedly trying to climb out and help her mother despite having a fractured neck and serious bruises. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, cutting through the crumpled vehicle to reach them. Both were rushed to the Centre Hospitalier Princesse Grace. Yes, a hospital named after Grace herself, which adds a strange poetic twist to the story. Doctors worked tirelessly, but Grace never regained consciousness. She was placed on life support, and despite brief glimmers of hope, the damage was irreversible. On September 14th, the world got the devastating news. Princess Grace of Monaco had died at the age of 52. The world gasped. Royal watchers, Hollywood fans, and regular folks alike couldn't believe it. This was Grace Kelly, the woman who looked like she stepped out of a dream, who had danced with Fred Astaire on screen and married a prince in real life. The fairy tale wasn't supposed to end like this, with a car wreck and a tragic twist on a mountain road. Then came the rumors. Oh boy, the tabloids had a field day. Some claimed that Stephanie was the one driving, not Grace. Others whispered about a fight, a distraction, even mechanical failure. The palace denied it all, firmly stating that Grace had been at the wheel. And to be fair, there was no solid proof of anything else, just a lot of sorrow and speculation. Grace's funeral was attended by a who's who of the world. Princess Diana, Cary Grant, Nancy Reagan, and royalty from every corner of Europe. Her coffin was carried through Monaco's cathedral, the same one where she had married Prince Rainier in that dreamy lace wedding dress back in 1956. The prince, heartbroken and visibly aged overnight, never really recovered from the loss. Today, the crash site is quiet, marked only by a humble plaque. But the story lives on part fairy tale, part Greek tragedy, with a touch of tabloid mystery. Grace Kelly's life was cinematic from start to finish, and though her final scene was heartbreakingly real, her legacy remains larger than life. By June 1967, Jayne Mansfield's Hollywood glow had dimmed, but her reputation as a blonde bombshell with a flair for the dramatic was still intact. Known for her provocative roles and larger-than-life personality, Jayne's life took a heartbreaking turn on June 29th, when she tragically died in a car accident, a mystery-laden event that soon became the stuff of urban legends. Jayne, born Vera Jane Palmer on April 19, 1933, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, always dreamed big. At 17, she married Paul Mansfield, and later made the leap to Hollywood to chase her acting dreams. Smart and savvy, Jayne figured out how to turn heads. She became one of the first Playboy bunnies, and made history as Playboy's Playmate of the Month in February 1955. Whether she was daringly exposing herself in public or becoming the first actress to appear nude on screen in Promises, 1963, Jayne mastered the art of staying in the spotlight. Her off-screen life was just as bold: pink mansion, a pack of chihuahuas, and a rivalry with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn's untimely death in 1962 deeply shook Jayne, prompting her to eerily predict, "Maybe I'll be next." Sadly, her words proved hauntingly accurate. After a nightclub performance in Biloxi, Mississippi on June 29, 1967, Jayne hit the road for a TV gig in New Orleans. With her career pivoting to nightclub acts and smaller appearances, travel was a constant. She set off in a 1966 Buick Electra 225 with her boyfriend, Sam Brody, her driver, Ronnie Harrison, 3 of her children snoozing in the back seat, and her 4 chihuahuas along for the ride. The journey started uneventfully, cruising through the Gulf Coast's summer night air. After a quick stop at a 24-hour diner near the Mississippi-Louisiana state line, things took a dangerous turn. A dense mist settled over the swampy Highway 90, combining with insecticide spray from a mosquito fogging truck to create an eerie, blinding fog. Barreling through at 80 miles per hour, the Buick didn't see the slow-moving 18-wheeler ahead. The car slammed into the truck's rear, shearing off its roof and leaving the front mangled. Jayne, Sam, and Ronnie, seated in the front, were killed instantly, while her children in the back miraculously survived. Speculation exploded when photos of the crash showed Jayne's blonde wig hanging from the windshield, sparking rumors that she had been decapitated. However, the coroner confirmed that while her injuries were severe, scalping and skull trauma, her head was not severed. As if the story weren't bizarre enough, Jayne's connection to Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey added fuel to the fire. Rumor had it LaVey cursed Brody, predicting his death in a car crash. This tale gained even more traction with the 2017 documentary Mansfield 6667. Jayne's tragic death left a lasting legacy, not just in Hollywood but also in car safety. The horrific crash led to the introduction of Mansfield bars, underride guards on semi-truck trailers designed to prevent cars from sliding underneath during collisions. In Life and Death, Jayne Mansfield was unforgettable, leaving behind a legacy as dramatic and impactful as her career. Sam Kinison was a force of nature, a comedian whose voice alone could fill a room and whose energy was impossible to ignore. Known for his screaming, intense style, he carved a unique niche in the world of stand-up comedy during the late 1980s and early 1990s. But behind that loud, wild persona was a complex man who had gone from being a preacher to one of the most memorable and controversial comedians of his time. Sadly, his life was cut short in a tragic car crash in 1992, ending the career of a man who had so much more to offer. On April 10, 1992, near Needles, California, Kinison's life came to a sudden and tragic end. He was driving his 1989 Pontiac Turbo Trans Am on the highway when his car crossed over into the opposite lane and collided head-on with a pickup truck driven by a 16-year-old driver. The collision was fatal, and Kinison died instantly at the scene. The exact cause of the accident remains unclear, with questions about whether it was due to speed, driver error, or other factors. Regardless of the details, the result was devastating not just for those involved, but for fans and the entertainment world as a whole. Kinison's death came as a shock. He was at the height of his career, a time when many comedians might have been settling into their fame, but he was still pushing boundaries. His comedy wasn't for everyone. His screaming, raw style was polarizing, but there was no denying his impact. He brought a kind of honest, sometimes painful energy to the stage, exploring topics like love, heartbreak, and frustration in a way few others dared. His background as a preacher gave him a unique edge, mixing religious themes with his explosive delivery to create a brand of comedy that was as intense as it was hilarious. The accident itself was tragic, not only because of Kinison's death, but also because it involved a teenager behind the wheel of the pickup truck. The collision was sudden and severe, a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, no matter how loud or bold you are. For someone like Kinison, who seemed larger than life, it was a harsh reminder that fame and personality cannot shield you from tragedy. In the years since his death, Kinison's legacy has been remembered with a mix of admiration and reflection. His style influenced many comedians who followed, especially those who combine vulnerability with raw, emotional intensity. He was never just a loud guy yelling jokes. He was a man who used his voice to express frustration, pain, and humor all at once. The suddenness of his passing only added to the mythos around him, a cautionary tale of a life lived fast and a career cut short. Kinison's death also highlights a broader truth about the risks we take, whether on the road or in life. Accidents can happen in a split second, and sometimes even the biggest personalities can be vulnerable. The details of the crash may never be fully known, but the loss is deeply felt. For fans, colleagues, and family, it was the end of an era and a painful reminder of the unpredictability of life.